Our next storyteller is someone who just moved here from Atlanta not long ago. I'm from Atlanta. I moved here 25 years ago from Atlanta, and it didn't have anything when I lived there. And I moved to San Francisco, not because I was a pervert, but eventually I figured that out. But this person arrived and has landed in the heart of pervert country. He's not only been coming to Bawdy since before he moved, but he's actually a deep, deep part of our community already, and I'm not going to tell you much other than that, except that I see him every month for rehearsal. So this is his first time doing this. He's worked very hard on his story, and y'all need to give it up super fucking hard for Raj.
Oh my God! Dixie, you promised. I hope this really gets me laid, okay? All right. It was 1 a.m. I was outside a dungeon in Tucker, Georgia, which is a bleak industrial suburb outside Atlanta. It's a place that's all full of warehouses and 18-wheelers. And then suddenly, she walks up to me and asks, "My play partner for the evening didn't really work out. Are you interested in playing?" For a moment, I was stunned. I looked up and down at her, this vivacious, tall woman with perfect black skin, all tits and ass and curves in the right places. In fact, I just realized she's actually a spitting image of our lovely timekeeper, Courtney, right there. So, for the rest of the show, just imagine Courtney, okay? All right, so I realized I had to make a decision right then. And this night was gonna either go really, really well for me or, So 15 years ago, when I moved to the US from India right after college, being on stage talking about my sex life was not part of the plan. I grew up in Mumbai, which is a teeming city of 20 million people, in a culture that never really ever talks about sex, but somehow still manages to produce a fuck ton of babies. On top of that, I was a nerd. This meant that when I got here, I had no sexual experience whatsoever. Completely, totally extra virgin. So that gradually and somewhat painfully changed over time. I had sex for the first time at the ripe old age of 26. But sex and dating were always like, kind of like a foreign country and language to me. So I never really got very confident or comfortable in it. So at some point, when I was 29, I met the woman who was eventually to become my wife. And it was with a deep sense of relief that A, I would never ever have to date again. And B, this whole sex thing was just taken care of for the rest of my life. As you can tell, that might not have gone according to plan either. So my wife, who goes by Andy, is sitting in the audience. You'll find her wearing an affiliated with a gay shirt. And she's like this impish pixie with short hair, strawberry cheeks, and just a coy smile and really bubbling boobs that just want to come out and grab you. So she, shortly after we got married, started coming out to me first as being queer, and then as being interested in an open relationship. So we were monogamish for a while, living in Atlanta, Georgia for a few years. And then last year, she moved to San Francisco for a job and went full on poly. While I was in Atlanta, we were doing long distance for about 8 months. So there I was in Atlanta, without my wife, just feeling alone and having to listen to things on the phone every week, like, "Hey, I went to this play party last night and I made this new fisting buddy, and guess what? She has the juiciest pussy ever." So that's what I was having to hear, and I was like, what the fuck is going on there over there? So things came to a head when I visited San Francisco for the first time, walked into our apartment, into our bedroom, and just ran into ropes tied all over the bed and, you know, floggers. I didn't even know what floggers were then, but, a ping pong paddle and all kinds of other stuff that I had no idea what they were. That was my first exposure to BDSM. But at that time, when I picked up the ping pong paddle, and my first thought was, why is there only one and where's the ball? So, needless to say, I kind of freaked out. I Eventually I got back to Atlanta and calmed down a little bit. So I was like, if I have to stay married and if I have to support my partner in this, I kind of have to figure out what this BDSM thing is and why people would ever even want to do it. So it's, like the nerd I am, I started doing research. I picked up this book called picked up this book, like books, like best things ever. Book called SLM 101 by this guy named Jay Wiseman. And then another book called The Ultimate Guide to Kink by Tristan Taormino. And I did my research and realized that, if I actually had to figure this out, I actually had to experience BDSM or kink on my own, which is why, a little bit of Google and Meetup and other searching later, I ended up finding myself at a BDSM play party at this place called 1763, which is Atlanta's largest dungeon. I walked around most of the play party trying to be very invisible, just staring wide-eyed at all this crazy shit that was going on. Like a guy tying up a naked woman and hanging her from a ceiling, and a woman putting a guy over a bench and literally whacking his ass, and a naked woman on a bench with fire sticks all over her. This is crazy stuff. I talked to several people, asked them what they were getting out of it, and got some interesting answers. And around 1 in the morning, I was like, my research is done. I'm going to go home and sleep in my own warm bed when that lovely woman, I'll call her by her first name initial K, walked up to me, or you can call her Courtney if you like. Let's just call her Courtney. When Courtney walked up to me and made me that most enticing offer, I told her, she told me she'd been into kink for almost a decade, and I told her this was my first time at a BDSM thing ever. She just looked at me kind of up and down and said, you'll just have to do. So we sat down on a couch, and she said, I'm going to help you through this. We're going to negotiate a scene. So she walked me through negotiating what she called a very basic spanking scene, where when I indicate to you, you're going to spank me, and I'm going to give you some safe words, all of that good stuff. Then we did that, went to a corner, started making out a bit. This was going well until around 2 a.m. when the dungeon monitors came around and said, time to close the dungeon. She looked at me and said, this dungeon actually rents private rooms, so let's get one. All right, this is going to be interesting. So we got the private room, we continued making out, it was going pretty well, clothes started coming off, and at some point she kind of flipped over and wiggled her ass and indicated she wanted the spanking to start. Again, remember that this was not something I'd done before. Spanking, the idea of hitting somebody in any way, not quite my thing. So I kind of gave her tap and asked her what that was like. And she just looked at me in great disdain and said, on a scale of 1 to 10, that was a -5. So I was like, oh, okay, all right. I kept going a little bit harder and harder and harder, and she kept going oh, oh, oh. She seemed to be liking it. It was interesting. Kept going till my hands just were stinging and burning, and they just couldn't do anything else. And then she just went limp and fell in my arms and just stayed there for a bit. And then she looked at me and said, that was lovely. What would you like to do next? It's like, what are my options? She's like, one moment. Walks to her purse, pulls out her phone, opens a website called FetLife, pulls up her profile, kind of shoves it in my face and says, here are all the things I'm into. Just pick something you like. So I go through this really intimidating list of the craziest shit that I've never heard of. Like blood play and fire play and like, ugh. And then I pick a couple of things that I was like, okay, I can handle that. One of them said massage giving, which was like, okay, I like to get receiving massages, so I can get that. And the second was fingering, receiving. Right? I know how to finger. That's still within my thing. So she started by giving me an absolutely lovely massage. I was completely relaxed and also turned on. And at some point, I was just like, oh, this is amazing. And I grabbed her ass and flipped her onto her back and slid a finger into her pussy. She tasted like water infused with parsley and thyme. So kept going to her finger, there was another finger that went in, and I found her G-spot and kept going. She started orgasming and like just bucking up and down, so I had to hold her down by her chest with my hand and just like kept going, and she kept coming. At some point, it felt like her pussy was gonna just eat my fingers alive. And then she just went loose and just fell back. And then she looked at me in complete awe and wonder and said 3 magic words. I lost count. So looked at the clock, and it was about 6:30 in the morning. We'd been playing for 5 hours without even knowing it. So it was too late to kind of go back to bed. Decided to get some coffee. This is a godforsaken suburb of Atlanta. There are no hipsters or hipster coffee shops around. So the only option is a Starbucks. So here we are sitting outside a Starbucks on a Sunday morning with all these minivans full of suburban moms driving in, going to church with their kids. And we're sitting outside, me just dressed like a regular guy drinking my caramel macchiato. And she's sitting there with a completely blissed out expression on her face, wearing her like Burning Man boots and a black lacy skirt and a black leather corset and black cat ears. And you can see all these moms like just rushing in to get their coffee and like running out and taking a pause and looking at us and wondering what she'd been having. So anyway, I would love to tell you that my story kind of ends here, and I'd found, like many people on the stage who've told this kinds of stories before, I'd found my kink, and my life was never the same again. My sex life has always been perfect after that. However, I've discovered that over time, while I'm pretty okay with engaging in some light kink to make a partner happy, I'm pretty fundamentally vanilla myself. And this has not been for lack of trying. I've been to play parties, dungeons, festivals. I just keep hoping to discover the thing. And, when I will discover the thing, I can go walk proudly into one of Reed Mihalko's play parties and in the welcome circle say, my wildest today is the thing. And because my thing will be so crazy and so pervy that there'll be like 10 people who just leap up and say, yes, that is my thing too, and I want to do that thing with you. But alas, I haven't found the thing yet. Last year, like many of you, I went to this thing called Burning Man. And I did mushrooms at the temple at sunrise. It was a fucking awesome experience. I was hoping to discover, like as many people had told me, some deep, dark secret about myself. Instead, what happened was I emerged with a feeling of complete calm and euphoria, and a sensation that my life was actually pretty fucking solid, and I didn't need to actually change anything. So, it turns out that even my trips are vanilla. Yeah. So, I've just decided that I'm going to explore this whole, non-monogamy, kink, all of this space just at my own pace. And until I find the thing, I'm just going to continue being the best vanilla you can find. Thank you.
I got one pitch when the theme was vanilla and proud, and that was it. Didn't he do a great job?